No one wrote down the names of those who disappeared. That was the first thing I learned about Hargrove Estate, not from books, not from records, but from the silence. Salem, 1894, a town already haunted by its past, had one place even the bravest men refused to speak of, not out of superstition, but out of something far worse. Memory. Because the Hargrove Estate did not simply kill, it erased. I arrived just before dusk, against the better judgment of every man who had tried to stop me. The coachman refused to go any further than the fork in the road. His hands trembled as he returned my money. "Sir, if you hear your name called," he said, avoiding my eyes, "do not answer." I laughed then. I do not laugh any more. The estate stood where the fog refused to move, as if the land itself held its breath. Its structure was grand once, Victorian elegance twisted into decay, windows blackened, wood warped, and yet it felt aware, watching, waiting. As I crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped, not like cold air, but like stepping into something unwelcoming. The scent hit me immediately. Rot, and something faintly floral beneath it, like perfume on a corpse. The door shut behind me. I did not touch it. At first, there was nothing. Then, a sound, not footsteps, not movement, but breathing, slow, deep, close. I turned sharply. Nothing. Only the long corridor ahead, lined with portraits whose eyes followed not my body, but my thoughts. I could feel it. The house was not observing me. It was understanding me. That was when I found the floorboard. Loose. Waiting. Beneath it lay a diary, its leather cover cracked, pages brittle with age. The handwriting inside was hurried, desperate. The first line read, "If you are reading this, it already knows you." A chill crawled up my spine. Then came the second line, "Do not go to the attic." Above me, a floorboard creaked. Not randomly, not naturally, but deliberately, as if something had just shifted its weight after hearing me read. And in that moment, I realized something far worse than ghosts haunted this place. The Hargrove Estate was not abandoned. It was occupied. Before we go deeper, understand this. This story isn't for everyone. If you're still here, you're one of the few who can face what America buried. Subscribe now, and tell me in the comments, what state are you listening from? And would you dare hear this story from your own backyard? I should have left the moment the house breathed. But curiosity is a slow poison, and I had already swallowed too much of it. The diary trembled slightly in my hands, though the air around me was still. I told myself it was fear, nothing more. Then it whispered again. "Daniel." This time it came from behind me. I turned, slowly. The corridor stretched longer than before. I was certain of it. What had been a short hall upon entering now seemed to bend unnaturally, as though the house had quietly reshaped itself while I wasn't looking. And the portraits, they had changed. Before, they were strangers, faceless relics of some forgotten lineage. Now their features were clearer, defined, too defined. One of them blinked. I froze. No, that was impossible. But I saw it. The eyelids moved, slow, deliberate, and then stilled again, as if daring me to question my own sanity. A soft creak echoed above. The attic. My grip tightened around the diary. Do not go to the attic. The warning felt less like advice now, and more like a challenge. Something brushed past my shoulder. Cold. Intimate. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Only the faint impression of movement, like smoke disturbed in still air. Then, footprints, fresh, appearing one by one on the dusty floor in front of me. Not mine. Smaller, lighter, a child's. They moved slowly, deliberately, leading deeper into the house. I should have stopped. Instead, I followed. Each step echoed too loudly, as though the house wanted to make sure something else could hear me approaching. The footprints stopped at a door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, darkness, but not empty darkness, living darkness, shifting, watching, waiting. A whisper slipped through the crack. "You came back." My breath caught. "I never left," I said before I could stop myself. Silence. Then, laughter, soft, childlike. Wrong. The door creaked open further, on its own. And there, just beyond the threshold, two figures stood. Still, unmoving, their outlines barely visible, like shadows refusing to fully exist. But I could feel their eyes, studying me, learning me. One of them tilted its head, then spoke, not aloud, but directly inside my mind. "We remember you now." The temperature dropped violently. The diary fell from my hands. And behind me, the front door slammed shut again. Harder this time, final. I do not remember stepping into the room. Yet somehow, I was already inside. The door behind me shut without sound, as though the house no longer needed to announce its intentions. The air here was different, thicker, heavier, pressing against my lungs like unseen hands. The two figures stood at the far end, still, patient, waiting. "Who are you?" I forced the words out, though my voice felt chuzh, unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, they moved. Not forward, not backward, but closer, as if distance itself had folded to bring them near. Now I could see them. Two girls, identical. Pale skin stretched too thin over delicate bones. Eyes dark, not empty, but full, filled with something ancient. Their dresses belonged to another century, yet untouched by time. One smiled. The other didn't. "We had names once," the smiling one said. The other finished. "But no one remembers them." A chill sank deep into my chest. "That's not possible," I whispered. "Everyone leaves records. Births, deaths." The girls tilted their heads in perfect unison. "No," they said together. "Not us." The walls creaked softly, as if agreeing. The diary's words echoed in my mind. They were never recorded. I swallowed hard. "Then, how do I know you exist?" The smile widened. "You don't." Suddenly, the room shifted. The walls stretched upward, the ceiling warped, the very space twisted, like reality itself recoiling from the truth. And then I saw it. Behind them, more figures. Faint, distorted, dozens, hundreds. Layered into the walls like stains that would never wash away. Faces pressing outward, silently screaming. "These—" I stepped back, heart racing. "These people stayed," one sister said. "Like you will," said the other. "No," I snapped, backing toward the door. "I'm leaving." Their smiles faded. Not into anger, not into fear, but into something far worse. Pity. "You still think there is an outside," they whispered. Behind me, I reached for the door. My hand met wood, solid, cold, unmoving. I pulled. Nothing. I turned back and froze. The girls were gone. The room was empty. No, not empty. Closer. The whisper came from behind my ear. So were we. Once. Chapter 4. The hallway that should not exist. The door would not open. I pulled harder, panic creeping into my fingers, my breath growing sharp and uneven. The wood beneath my hands felt wrong, not like a door, like flesh pretending to be one. I let go immediately. Behind me, silence. Too much silence. I turned slowly. The room was gone. Not dark, not hidden, gone. In its place, a hallway, longer than any structure of the house should allow. It stretched endlessly into dim, flickering light. The walls were lined with doors, dozens of them, each slightly different, each whispering something I couldn't quite understand. This was not the same house. Or perhaps this was the real one. My heartbeat echoed unnaturally loud, bouncing off walls that seemed to lean inward, listening. Think, I muttered to myself, this isn't real. It's some trick, some illusion. Then why does it know your name? The voice wasn't mine. I froze. It came from one of the doors. Third on the left. The handle turned slowly, by itself. A soft creak. And then, the door opened. Inside, I saw my childhood home. Perfect, unchanged. Sunlight spilling through the windows. The faint smell of my mother's cooking, lingering in the air. Impossible. No, I whispered, stepping closer. A figure moved inside. A boy, small, fragile. He turned toward me, and I felt my blood turn to ice. It was me, younger, innocent, unafraid. He smiled. Why did you come here? He asked softly. I didn't. This isn't. I stepped back, shaking my head. The boy's smile faded. You weren't supposed to find this place. The room behind him darkened. Rapidly, violently. Shadows flooded in from every corner, swallowing the light, stretching unnaturally across the walls. The boy didn't move, didn't run. He just stood there, as the darkness reached him. And then, it took him. The doors, or slammed shut. I staggered back, breath hitching. No, that wasn't real. All the other doors began to rattle, softly at first, then louder. Handles twisting, wood creaking, something inside each one, trying to get out. The whispers grew into voices, layered, overlapping, familiar. My voice, screaming, begging, laughing. You could have left. You didn't listen. You belong here now. I covered my ears, but it didn't help, because the sound wasn't outside. It was inside my head. Then, at the very end of the hallway, one final door appeared. It hadn't been there before. Old, rotten, breathing, the attic. And this time, it was already open. Disclaimer. This story is fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real events is purely coincidental. Chapter 5. The attic watches back. The attic was already open. Waiting. No. Expecting me. Every instinct in my body screamed to turn back, to run, to break through whatever illusion this house had trapped me in. But my feet moved forward anyway. Not by choice. Never by choice. The staircase groaned beneath each step, as if protesting my ascent, or warning something above that I was coming. The air grew colder, heavier. Each breath felt borrowed. Halfway up, I stopped. There was another sound, not from above, behind me. I turned slowly. The hallway I had just come from was gone, replaced by a solid wall. No doors, no escape, only forward. Of course, I whispered, my voice cracking. Of course. The house wasn't trapping me. It was guiding me. Up toward the truth. Or something worse. I reached the top step. The attic stretched wide before me, far larger than the house could possibly contain. The ceiling arched unnaturally high, lost in shadow. The darkness above wasn't empty. It moved. Slowly. like something breathing just out of sight. And then I saw them. Shapes. Hanging in the air. Dozens. No, hundreds. Human silhouettes, suspended like smoke, caught in stillness. Some twisted, some reaching, all silent, all watching. My chest tightened. "These are the missing," I whispered. A voice answered. "Yes." I spun around. The sisters stood behind me. Closer now. Too close. "They didn't leave," one said. "They were kept," said the other. My eyes darted back to the floating shapes. "They're alive?" I asked. The sisters smiled. The same terrible, knowing smile. Not anymore. Something shifted above. A low, dragging sound, like nails scraping across wood. Slowly, a mirror descended from the darkness. It didn't fall. It lowered itself, deliberately. It stopped in front of me. The surface was old, warped, but clear to her. Far enough. I looked and saw myself. Relief flooded through me until my reflection moved. It smiled. I did not. My stomach dropped. "No." I stepped back, but the reflection leaned closer, closer than I was standing. Its lips parted, and in my own voice it whispered, "Thank you for coming back." Behind it, inside the mirror, I saw them. The sisters, standing in a place that looked like the attic, but fuller, darker, alive. And then, something grabbed my shoulder, cold, sharp, pulling me backward, toward the mirror. "No!" My hand slammed against the glass, and for a brief, horrifying moment, I felt something on the other side, grabbing back. Chapter 6. The reflection that replaced me. The moment my hand touched the mirror, something pulled, not my body, not my arm. Me. It was as if my very existence had weight, and something on the other side had finally found its grip. I tried to pull back, but my reflection pulled harder, its fingers pressed against mine through the glass, perfectly aligned, yet moving with its own will. "No," I whispered, panic flooding in. "This isn't real. This isn't—" "It is now." My reflection smiled wider. Too wide. Its eyes were not mine anymore. They were deeper, older, hungry. The attic around me began to distort. The floating silhouettes trembled, their forms rippling like disturbed water. And then they started to turn. All of them. Toward me, or rather, toward the mirror. Whispers filled the air. Hundreds of voices, overlapping, desperate. "Don't let it take you. Don't look at it. You're still whole. Still whole." The words hit me like a blow. I looked back at my reflection and realized something horrifying. It was more solid than I was. My edges blurred, faint, unstable, like I was the one fading. "No, no, no." My reflection leaned forward, pressing its forehead against the glass. "I've been waiting," it said softly. "Do you know how long it's been since someone came willingly?" "I didn't come willingly." It laughed, a perfect imitation of my voice. But empty. "You walked in." The truth of it cut deeper than fear. Behind the reflection, the sisters appeared again, standing in that other version of the attic, watching, guiding. "Every house needs new memory," one whispered. "And every memory needs a place to live," said the other. My grip slipped. The mirror pulsed, and suddenly I saw it. Not just my reflection, but others, layered behind it, faces, dozens, hundreds, all pressed against the glass, all trying to reach out, all screaming without sound. "They're inside," I gasped. "Yes, the reflection said calmly. And now, so are you. The glass cracked. A thin line at first, then spreading. Fast, violent. Like something inside was pushing outward, or something outside was being pulled in. My hand sank deeper, past the surface, into cold, endless cold. I tried to scream, but my voice didn't come out, because it wasn't mine anymore. And in that final moment, as my body began to fade, I saw my reflection step forward, out of the mirror, smiling, breathing, alive. And I was no longer there. Chapter 7. The Man Who Walked Out. The next morning the fog lifted. For the first time in years, the road to Hargrove Estate revealed itself, clear, silent, untouched. And from its gates, a man walked out. He looked ordinary, clothes slightly worn, face pale from what seemed like a sleepless night, eyes hollow, but alive. Daniel. At least, that was the name he carried. He paused at the edge of the estate and turned back. The house stood still, as it always had, watching, waiting, satisfied. A faint smile crossed his lips. "Thank you," he whispered. But the voice was not entirely human. By noon, he had reached the town. People noticed him immediately, not because he looked strange, but because he felt familiar. Too familiar. Mrs. Whitaker, the baker's wife, was the first to speak. "Daniel?" she asked hesitantly. "I thought you were—" "Gone?" he finished, smiling politely. Something about the smile made her uneasy. "Yes. Well, yes. I was just visiting," he replied calmly. Visiting. Such a simple word. Such a terrible lie. As the day passed, more people greeted him, and each time, he knew them, not just their names, their memories, their fears, their regrets, things no stranger should ever know. "Your son still writes you letters," he told a grieving man. "Your husband never stopped loving you," he whispered to a widow. "You should have answered the door that night," he said softly to a trembling old woman. Each word struck too deep, too precise. People began to step back, to avoid him, to whisper. Something was wrong. By evening the first disappearance happened, a young boy, gone without a trace. No struggle, no sound, just gone, and the last person seen near him was Daniel. That night, Daniel stood alone in his rented room. The mirror before him reflected his image perfectly. Still, silent. Normal, but slowly, very slowly, the reflection began to change. Not its face, not its form, but its expression. It smiled, wider, deeper, more natural, as if it was becoming more real than the man standing before it. Daniel touched the glass and whispered, "There's room for more." Behind him, for just a second, two faint figures appeared. The sisters, watching, approving, and miles away. Deep inside Hargrove Estate, a new shape formed among the others, faint, struggling, screaming without sound. The real Daniel, trapped, forgotten, erased. Chapter 8. The Town That Slowly Forgets. At first no one noticed the pattern, because forgetting is a quiet thing. It does not arrive like a storm. It seeps in, like fog. The boy who vanished was remembered for exactly one day. On the second day, people still spoke of him, but their words lacked certainty. Was his name Thomas or Timothy? Did he live near the church or the mill? By the third day, no one mentioned him at all, except Daniel. He remembered everything, perfectly, too perfectly. He walked through town like a man studying a book he had already read, every face, every name, every hidden sorrow. He carried them all, and with each passing hour, he seemed stronger, more solid, more real. Mrs. Whitaker was the next to go. Her bakery remained open that morning, bread still warm, oven still burning. But she was gone. No signs of struggle, no open doors, no witnesses, just absence. People began to talk again, but not about her, about something else, something harder to define, a feeling, a presence. "It's the house," one man muttered in the tavern. Another shook his head. "No, the house hasn't changed." "Then what has?" Silence fell, because deep down, they knew. That night, Daniel returned to the mirror. He stared into it longer than before, studying, listening, waiting. And slowly, shapes began to appear behind his reflection. Faint at first, then clearer. Faces pressed against the inside of the glass. Eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. Among them, a familiar one. Mrs. Whitaker. Her expression frozen in terror. Daniel smiled softly. "You see now," he whispered. "You're part of it." The reflection nodded back, as if agreeing. Across town, something even stranger began to happen. People started forgetting places. A street no one could recall walking. A house no one remembered living in. A room inside their own home that felt wrong, unfamiliar, watching, and always, at the center of it, Daniel. He was seen everywhere, and yet no one could clearly remember when they last spoke to him, or what they said, or why they felt uneasy afterward. Because the house was no longer just a place. It was expanding, through memory, through identity, through him. And somewhere deep inside Hargrove Estate, the real Daniel screamed, pounded, fought against the invisible walls of the mirror prison, but no sound escaped. No one heard him, because outside, he no longer existed. Chapter 9. The Mirror Needs More Faces. By the end of the week, 7 people were gone. No bodies, no evidence, no memories strong enough to hold them in place. Only Daniel remembered them all. And that was the problem. The town began to fracture, not physically, but mentally. People repeated conversations they didn't recall starting, forgot names mid-sentence, stared at loved ones with a strange hesitation, as if trying to recognize a face they had known their entire lives. Something was rewriting them, quietly, precisely. Daniel walked among them like a patient collector, never rushing, never forcing, just waiting, watching, learning. It happened again at dusk. A man named Elias, though no one would remember that name soon, stood outside his home, staring into nothing. Daniel approached him slowly. "You feel it, don't you?" Daniel said softly. Elias nodded without turning. "Something is missing." Daniel smiled. "Yes," he whispered, "but not for long." Elias finally looked at him, and in that moment, his expression changed. Not fear, not confusion. Recognition, deep, unnatural. As if some part of him had always known Daniel. "Have we met?" Elias asked. Daniel's smile widened. "We're about to." The next morning, Elias was gone. That night the mirror changed. No longer silent, no longer still. It pulsed, like a living thing, breathing, growing, hungry. Daniel stood before it again. But this time, he didn't look at himself. He looked through it, inside, at the growing mass of trapped forms. Dozens had become hundreds. Hundreds were becoming something else, a single presence, layered, merged, watching him back. The faces pressed harder now, more desperate, more aware. They had begun to understand their fate. They were not just trapped. They were being used. Why? A voice finally broke through. Weak F. Emilia. Daniel leaned closer. It was the real Daniel. Somehow. Still conscious. Still fighting. Why are you doing this? The trapped Daniel mouthed silently. The reflection, no longer just Daniel, tilted its head, then answered, You misunderstand. Its voice echoed from everywhere. From the mirror, from the walls, from Daniel himself. This is not destruction. It is preservation. The faces behind it twisted in silent horror. People forget, it continued calmly. Names fade. Lives disappear. History erases. A slow smile formed. But here, the mirror pulsed violently. Nothing is ever lost. Behind the reflection, the sisters appeared again, now clearer than ever, almost whole. You are helping us remember, they whispered together. Outside, another scream echoed through the town, then suddenly stopped. Daniel closed his eyes and smiled. Because the mirror was no longer enough. Chapter 10. The house begins to spread. It no longer needed walls. That was the first realization. Hargrove Estate had outgrown itself. The town woke to something subtle, yet deeply wrong. Doors didn't lead where they should. A man opened his bedroom door and found himself standing in a hallway he had never seen. A woman walked into her kitchen and forgot why she had entered. Not confusion, not distraction, erasure, and at the center of it, Daniel. He no longer wandered, he appeared. Wherever the forgetting grew strongest, he was there. That morning, a schoolteacher stood before her class. Mid-sentence, she stopped. Her chalk hovered against the board. Her mind, blank. The children stared. Ma'am, one asked. She turned slowly, eyes wide, terrified. I don't remember what I was teaching. Outside the window, Daniel stood, watching, smiling. That night, the first house changed. It belonged to a quiet family on the edge of town. Nothing remarkable, nothing cursed. Until the walls shifted. At first it was small. A door that led somewhere slightly longer than it should. A hallway that seemed to stretch just a little too far. Then the mirrors. Every reflective surface began to ripple. Not visibly, not obviously. But enough. Enough to make the mind question. Enough to invite a second look. The father saw it first. His reflection. Delayed, only by a second. But that was enough. He leaned closer. The reflection leaned closer too. Then stopped, while he continued moving, and smiled. The scream echoed through the house. But no one came, because no one remembered hearing it. By morning, the family was gone, and their house was not their house anymore. Inside, the layout had changed. Rooms added, hallways extended. A staircase that led nowhere before now led upward, to an attic. The infection had been gone. Across town, more houses followed, subtle shifts, unnoticed changes, until it was too late. Because Hargrove Estate was no longer a place, it was a pattern, a design, a structure that could grow anywhere memory weakened, and Daniel, or what wore his face, stood at its center. That night, he returned to the mirror. But now, it was no longer confined to one frame. Reflections appeared everywhere. Windows, water, glass, eyes. And within each, the same thing waited. The sisters, now smiling fully, alive. "You've done well," they whispered. Daniel tilted his head. "Is it enough?" The house answered, not with words, but with expansion. And somewhere, deep inside the original attic, the real Daniel felt it. The moment the house stopped being a prison and became something far worse. A world. Did you know, in the late 1800s, America had places where people didn't just disappear, they were forgotten. One of the most disturbing examples is the Oregon State Insane Asylum, established in 1883. Thousands of patients were admitted over the years, but many of them were never properly recorded. Overcrowding became so severe that identities were lost, files went missing, and countless individuals died without ever being officially documented. But the most chilling detail, their remains were cremated, and their ashes were stored in small copper canisters, labeled only with numbers, not names. Even today, hundreds of these containers still exist, with no way to identify who those people were. They lived. They suffered. But history erased them. Chapter 11. The town that no longer exists. It began with a map. A simple thing. Paper, ink, truth. A traveler arrived in Salem just after dawn. He carried with him a worn atlas, updated only a year prior. As he stood at the edge of town, he paused, confused. Because Salem was not where it should have been. The road existed. The land existed. But the town felt misplaced, as if it had been shifted slightly out of alignment with the world. He entered anyway. By midday, he noticed the first inconsistency. The church bell rang, but no one reacted. By afternoon, he asked a passerby, "How long has this town been here?" The man blinked, thought, hesitated. "I don't remember." That was when the traveler knew. This was not forgetfulness. This was removal. Meanwhile, within the town, people still lived, still spoke, still moved. But something essential was missing. Continuity. A woman sat at her dining table, staring at the man across from her. She knew him. She felt it. But his name would not come. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. The man smiled. "I've always been here." Outside, the streets stretched longer than before. Buildings leaned where they once stood straight. Windows reflected places that did not exist. And at the center, Daniel. He walked slowly through the town square. But now, no one questioned him, because no one remembered a time before him. Children stopped playing as he passed, not out of fear, but recognition, deep, unnatural. "Is he the one?" a little girl whispered. Her mother shushed her quickly. "Don't ask questions you can't remember asking." That night, the traveler tried to leave. He walked back the way he came. Straight road, clear path, unbroken. But after hours of walking, he found himself back in the town square, again and again and again. The town had no exit. Because I had no longer existed outside itself. It had folded inward. A closed system. A memory that refused to be forgotten. By trapping everything inside it. The traveler ran. Panic rising, breath collapsing, reality slipping. Until he saw it. At the far end of the street, the Hargrove estate, but larger now, much larger. Its walls stretching beyond what architecture should allow, its windows multiplying, watching, always watching. And as he stood there, frozen, the front door opened, slowly, and from within, Daniel stepped out. Welcome, he said softly. The traveler tried to speak, to scream, to run. But instead, he asked, "Have I always been here?" Daniel smiled. Yes. Behind him, the house expanded again. And somewhere deep inside, among the countless trapped forms, a new shape appeared, struggling, fading, becoming part of something else. Chapter 12. The memory that refuses to die. Not everything surrendered. That was the flaw. The house could erase, it could rewrite, it could consume. But some memories refused to die. It began with a woman. No one knew her name. Not anymore, not fully. But she felt wrong, out of place, like a word on the tip of the tongue that refuses to form. She stood in the middle of the town square, breathing heavily, eyes darting from face to face. "These people," she whispered, "they're missing." A man nearby frowned. "Who is?" She turned to him, desperate. "Everyone." The man blinked, confused. Then slowly, he forgot why he had stopped and walked away. But she didn't, because something inside her remained untouched. A fragment, a crack in the design. That night, she saw the mirror. Not in a house, not on a wall, but in water. Still, black, waiting. And inside it, she saw them. Hundreds of faces, trapped, layered, screaming without sound. And among them, a man, reaching, fighting, refusing. Their eyes met. And suddenly, she remembered. Not everything, not clearly, but enough. "The house," she gasped. "It's not a place." The man inside the reflection nodded desperately. "It's spreading," she continued, trembling. "Through us, through memory." The reflection pulsed, as if responding. Then, for the first time, something impossible happened. A voice came through. "Help me!" She stumbled back, heart racing. "You can speak?" she whispered. The face flickered, unstable, struggling. "Not for long," the voice strained. "It's learning, adapting." The surface of the water rippled violently. The other faces shifted, not in fear, but in reaction. Something had noticed. "You have to remember me," the voice said urgently. "If you forget, if everyone forgets, then I'm gone." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't even know you." "Our name." The silence that followed was heavy, terrible, because neither did he. The house had taken that first. "Then remember this," he said, voice breaking. "I was real." The water darkened, the connection weakening. "And the house," he whispered, fading, "is afraid of something." Her breath caught. Of what? But it was too late. The reflection shattered into stillness. The faces vanished, the voice gone. And behind her, a soft, familiar whisper. "You're not supposed to remember." She turned slowly. Daniel stood there, smiling. But for the first time, there was something else in his eyes. Not control, not certainty, but something fragile, something dangerous. Fear. Chapter 13. The first crack in the house. Fear. That was the first real sign something had changed. Not in the town, not in the people, but in him. Daniel stood motionless, watching the woman. For the first time, he wasn't entirely in control. "You shouldn't be able to do that," he said quietly. The woman didn't step back, didn't run, though every instinct screamed at her to. "I remembered," she said, voice trembling but steady. "That's something you can't take completely." Daniel's smile flickered. Just for a moment, A glitch. Behind him, the world shifted. Subtly, but enough. A building across the street bent inward, then snapped back. A window shattered, then reformed. Reality itself hesitated. The house was reacting. "You spoke to them," Daniel said. Not a question, a statement. Her breath caught. "Yes." Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. For a moment, everything stopped. The whispers, the movement, even the wind. Then, the ground beneath them cracked. A thin line at first, running across the street, then spreading. Faster. Wider. Like something beneath reality itself was splitting open. From within the crack, a sound emerged. Screaming. Not distant, not faint, but immediate, violent. Alive. The trapped. "They're still there," she whispered, horrified. "They're fighting." Daniel's expression darkened. "They are contained." "No," she shook her head. "They're remembering." That word hit something. Deep. Hidden. The crack widened. Light, not natural, not warm, poured out from beneath the ground. And within it, faces. Hundreds, pressing upward, straining, breaking through. Among them, the same man from before, the one who had spoken to her. His mouth opened, and this time, sound came out. A scream, raw, human, real. The world trembled. Buildings flickered. The sky itself seemed to distort. As if the illusion was losing its hold. Daniel staggered back slightly. Not much, but enough. "You're breaking it," he whispered. The woman stepped forward. For the first time, he stepped back. "What are you afraid of?" she asked. The ground split wider. The screams grew louder. The mirror world beneath reality, straining to break free. And then, for the first time, the sisters appeared not behind him, but beside him, and they were not smiling. "Stop this," they said in unison, but their voices were not as strong as before, not as certain, because something fundamental had changed. The house was no longer perfect. It had cracked. And through that crack, something real was trying to return. Chapter 14. The house fights back. The crack should not have existed. That was the first thing the house understood, and the last thing it would allow. The moment the scream broke through, everything changed. The sky above Salem twisted violently, as if something vast and unseen had grabbed hold of reality and begun to pull. Buildings stretched, shadows bent in impossible directions. The air thickened, not like fog, like pressure. The crack in the ground pulsed, light bursting through it in violent flashes. The trapped souls pushed harder, their forms breaking through in fragments, hands, faces, voices, desperate, real. And the house responded. A sound erupted. Not from the ground, not from the sky, but from everywhere at once. A deep, unnatural groan, like something ancient waking up in pain. The Hargrove estate expanded, violently. Its walls stretched outward, swallowing the surrounding streets. Windows multiplied endlessly, each one flickering with distorted reflections of those trapped within. And then, the doors opened, all of them. Across the town, every house, every room, every forgotten space. Doors that had never existed before, now stood wide open, and from within, darkness poured out. Not empty darkness, moving darkness, shadows, alive. They slithered across the ground, up the walls, into the cracks, reaching, grabbing, pulling the escaping forms back. The woman stumbled back, horror flooding her face. "No," she whispered. It's pulling them back. Daniel didn't move, but his voice changed, deeper, layered. They belong to us. The sisters stepped forward, their forms flickering, not stable anymore. Memory must remain contained, they said. The ground shook violently. The crack began to close. Slowly at first, then faster. The trapped faces screamed louder, reaching, begging. The man she had seen, he was almost free. Half his body emerged from the light, his hands stretched toward her. "Remember me!" he shouted. She ran forward, ignoring everything, ignoring the collapsing world, and grabbed his hand. The moment she did, something exploded. A shockwave tore through the town. For a single second, everything became clear. The illusion shattered. She saw it all. The truth. The town was gone. Consumed. Replaced by something vast, layered, endless. A labyrinth of memory and stolen identity. Every person, every face, every life, stacked inside the house. And at its center, not Daniel, not the sisters, but something far older, far deeper, watching, waiting, feeding. Then, the world snapped back. The illusion returned, but not perfectly. The crack did not fully close, and Daniel, for the first time, fell to one knee. The woman still held the man's hand, and this time, she did not let go. Chapter 15. The Thing Beneath the House. It was never just a house. As Daniel fell, the illusion trembled again, not as violently as before, but deeper, more unstable, like something beneath everything had shifted. The woman held the man's hand tightly, pulling him further out of the crack. His body flickered, half real, half forgotten, but this time, he didn't fade. And that was when the ground gave way. Not collapsing, not breaking, opening. A deep, widening tear beneath them revealed something that should never be seen. Not earth, not stone, but depth, endless. Layer upon layer of space folded into itself. Corridors, rooms, staircases, millions of them, stretching downward into a darkness that felt alive. The Hargrove estate was only the surface. "What is that?" the woman whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel slowly lifted his head, but his eyes were no longer fully his own. "You were never meant to see this," he said. The sisters appeared again, but now they were afraid. "It's waking," one said. "No," said the other, trembling. "It's hungry." From the depths, a sound rose, not a scream, not a voice, but something far worse. Recognition. The thing below had noticed them. The space beneath shifted, faster now. Rooms folding, walls forming and dissolving. Faces appearing in the structure itself, not trapped anymore, integrated. Part of it. "It's not holding them," the woman realized, horror filling her eyes. "It's becoming them." Daniel stood slowly, his form flickering, unstable. "This is what the house protects you from," he said quietly. The ground trembled violently. A massive shape began to rise from the depths, not fully visible, not fully formed, but vast, too vast. "You think we are the prison?" Daniel continued. The sisters shook their heads desperately. "Don't say it," they whispered. "But it's too late. We are the lock." The thing beneath surged upward. The entire town warped, buildings bending inward, skies splitting like glass. The crack widened into a chasm, and from within, something reached. Not a hand, not a limb, but a presence, heavy, ancient, endless. The woman staggered back, still holding the man. "If it gets out," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time, there was something human in his eyes again. "It won't stop at this town." The sisters screamed, the house roared, and the thing beneath rose higher. Chapter 16. The Choice That Ends Everything. The world was breaking. Not slowly, not subtly, completely. The sky above Salem had split into jagged fractures, like shattered glass barely holding together. Through those cracks, something vast and unknowable pressed against reality, watching, waiting. Below, the chasm had fully opened, and from its depths, it was rising. The thing had no true form. Every time the eye tried to understand it, it changed. A mass of shifting corridors, faces merging into walls, limbs that were not limbs, but memories trying to become structure. It was not a creature. It was a place, and it was coming into the world. The woman stumbled back, still gripping the man's hand. "Tell me how to stop it!" she shouted. Daniel stood between her and the chasm. Flickering, breaking. Two realities fighting inside him. "You can't stop it," he said. Behind him the sisters screamed. "You must not let it out," they cried. The woman's voice trembled. "Then what do I do?" Silence. Then Daniel looked at her. Truly looked. For the first time since he had been replaced. And in that moment, he remembered. Not everything, but enough. "I was real," he whispered. The mirror inside the world cracked again. A sharp, violent sound. From the chasm, the thing surged upward, faster now. Hungry. Aware. "It feeds on what is forgotten," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "It grows where memory fails." The woman's grip tightened. "Then we remember," she shouted. "We hold on. We fight." Daniel shook his head slowly. Tears formed in his eyes. "No." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You become it." The truth hit her like a blade. To remember everything was to become part of it. To forget everything was to let it loose. Two choices. Both terrible, both final. The man she held looked at her, desperate, alive, real. "Don't let me go," he begged. Behind them, the world collapsed further. Buildings folding into the chasm, people vanishing mid-step, reality unraveling thread by thread. The sisters screamed again, now breaking apart themselves. "It's too late," they cried. Daniel stepped forward. "I can hold it," he said. The woman froze. "What?" "I'm already part of it," he continued. "I exist in both places, both states." The ground shook violently. "I can become the lock again." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "And you?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I disappear." The thing beneath roared, a sound that was not sound, a pressure that crushed thought itself. Time was ending. The choice had to be made. Now, Chapter 17. The Last Memory. Time was collapsing. Not passing. Collapsing. The sky above no longer resembled anything human eyes were meant to understand. Fractures spread endlessly, and through them, the thing beneath pressed harder, closer, almost here. Daniel stood at the edge of the chasm, between two realities, between existence and erasure. "I don't have much time," he said quietly. The woman stepped toward him. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." His voice was calm now, strangely calm. Behind him, the sisters were breaking apart, fragments of themselves dissolving into the air like ash. They were never meant to exist this long. "We only held it back," one whispered. "We were never enough," said the other. The man she held tightened his grip. "You said remembering matters," he said, desperate. "Then remember him. Don't let him disappear." Daniel looked at him, a faint, sad smile forming. "That's the problem," he said. "If she remembers me—" His voice trembled. "I stay." Silence. Heavy, crushing. The truth settled in. To seal the thing, to lock it away again, Daniel had to be forgotten. Completely. Not just by the world, but by her. The only one who still truly saw him. Tears streamed down her face. "No," she whispered. "I won't do that." The ground shook violently. The thing surged upward, closer now, almost breaking through. "You don't understand," Daniel said urgently. "If you remember me, I remain part of this world, and the door stays open." The chasm widened. Reality screamed. "If you forget me," he continued softly, "I become nothing." The woman shook her head. "I can't." Daniel stepped closer. For the first time, close enough to touch. He gently took her hand. "You already are," he said. And then he leaned forward and whispered something into her ear. A memory. A single, fragile truth. Something only she would know. Only she could hold. Her eyes widened, tears falling faster. "I'll remember," she said. Daniel smiled. "No," he whispered, and gently, he placed his hand over her eyes. "Let me go." The world roared. The thing surged. And she, screaming, closed her eyes and forgot. Instantly, Daniel faded. Not slowly, not painfully, but completely, as if he had never existed. The moment he vanished, the chasm began to close. The thing beneath screamed, a sound of infinite hunger, denied. The fractures in the sky sealed. The world snapped back. The house shrank, collapsed, contained, and silence returned. Chapter 18. The house that still remains. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Morning came like nothing had happened. The sky was whole again. The streets stood still. Houses rested where they always had. No cracks, no screams, no memory of collapse. People woke, stretched, and continued their lives. Unaware, unchanged, or so it seemed. A woman stood at the edge of town, breathing slowly, eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something she could not name. She felt lighter, but also empty. There was something she had lost, something important, something she could almost remember, but not quite. She pressed her hand to her chest. "Why does it feel like I forgot someone?" she whispered. No answer came. Behind her, the road ended where it always had. No estate. No ruins. Nothing. The Hargrove estate was gone, or so the world believed. Days passed, then weeks. The town stabilized. People laughed again, worked again, lived again. But sometimes, very rarely, someone would pause, mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-breath, and feel it. A gap, like a missing word in a sentence they couldn't finish. And then, they would forget again. The woman was the only one who didn't. Not fully. She couldn't remember his face, his name, his voice. But she remembered the feeling. Loss. And sometimes, at night, she dreamed of a house. Not clearly, not completely, just fragments. A hallway that stretched too far, a mirror that watched back. And a voice. Soft. Fading. I was real. She would wake up crying, without knowing why. Years passed. The town changed. New people came, old ones faded. Time moved forward. But some things never leave. One evening, a child wandered farther than he should have, past the last row of houses, past the road, into the edge of the woods, and there, hidden where nothing should be, he found it. Not the full estate, not yet. Just a door, standing alone, old, rotten, breathing. The boy tilted his head, curious. He stepped closer, and the door, slowly, opened. From within, darkness, and a whisper. Not loud, not threatening, but familiar. Do you remember me? The boy smiled slightly and stepped inside. The door closed, silently. And somewhere, far deeper than before, far beyond memory, something stirred again, because the truth was never destroyed, only delayed. The Hargrove estate does not die, it waits. And one day, someone will remember again.